This year's sweet potato harvest was
terrible.
pathetic.
I found it appalling.
That's harsh. I was gonna say disappointing.
If you're new to the channel, this is Growing with Bobby. If you're not new to the channel, this is, this is still Growing with Bobby.
Hi, I'm Bobby. Today I'm growing sweet potatoes. Well, I'm not growing them today. They take months to grow, and that would be really boring to watch. That would be like watching paint dry. Can you imagine how boring that would be?
No, wait. Don't imagine that. Don't imagine boring. Imagine interesting. Imagine entertaining. Imagine exciting. Good, you're still here. Let's start again. Today I'm harvesting sweet potatoes. No, wait. I'm not harvesting them today either. I already did that, and the yield wasn't very good this year. I've been growing sweet potatoes for years, and each time I try something a little bit different. In today's video, I'm going to examine what I think I did wrong this year so that I can learn from it and grow better next year. For starters, it's currently mid-November and I've already planted next year's sweet potato crop. Before the end of this video, I'll tell you why.
Wow, now you've got my attention.
For 2023, I planted my sweet potatoes right here.
As you can see, these are not sweet potatoes. These are now blackberry bushes. The sweet potatoes did okay here, but they really weren't getting enough sun because of the tree branches overhead shading out the area. So I planted the 2024 crop to grow on a new trellis where it would get more sun.
That was in February.
Cold, far too cold.
Well, that depends on where you live and the weather for each specific year. In Central Florida, where I live, we're warmer sooner than most of the US, but we have some years when freezing temperatures start in October or last into March, and other years when we really don't have any freezing temperatures at all. Our average frost dates are basically the month of January. And in 2024, it was warm enough for me to plant the sweet potatoes outside in February. However, in March, we were already having hot afternoons with very little rainfall. Before that, I used to grow sweet potatoes in plastic laundry tubs, like this one. I drilled drainage holes into the bottoms of them, and they worked great for a few years. They aren't UV protected though, and as time passed, the sun's rays totally destroyed the tubs. This one isn't going to last too much longer either. So now I use fabric bags, which seem to hold up a lot better, and they blend in with the landscaping better too, so it's more HOA friendly. The downside is that they don't hold water nearly as well. While the plastic tubs held the water long enough for the soil to absorb as much as it wanted before the excess drained out the holes, the fabric bags leak on all sides and through the bottom, so the soil doesn't always get fully saturated. Additionally, water evaporates through the sides of the fabric bags, and so the oil dries out faster as well. That reduced absorption, increased evaporation, and intense Florida sun hitting in March stunted the sweet potato growth last year. They grew well in February, and they stalled out in March. They struggled throughout the summer and didn't start to bounce back until October. Even though I knew it would be a lackluster harvest, I was hopeful for a little more than what we got this year. Growing sweet potatoes in containers is not a very good way to do it. I do it this way simply because I have very little growing space that I can use. I live in an urban area with an HOA, and so I have to leave the front yard looking somewhat normal. And my backyard is fully shaded with large oak trees. That leaves me with very little precious space for planting. The leaves of sweet potatoes are edible, and are especially good for feeding to chickens, goats, and other homestead animals. Humans typically eat the tubers that grow underground though. In order to harvest those, the plants need to be dug up. That means I can't intercrop them with any perennials, like these, unless I grow them in containers. Someday, I'm praying for more space. Perhaps a few acres where I can have chickens, an orchard, or a food forest. I really like the concept of grocery row gardening that David the Good talks about on his channel. And I'm dreaming of someday having a place with enough land to let my sweet potatoes roam free on the ground. This is what a sweet potato patch should look like. And growing like this, as the vines stretch out and nodes touch the ground, they put down more roots. The more expansive the root structure, the more water and nutrients the plants can pull out of the soil, and the healthier the plants will be, which results in bigger, more nutrient-filled tubers. A couple of weeks prior to harvesting mine, I took some cuttings and rooted them. This is by far the easiest way to propagate sweet potatoes if you already have existing vines. Just cut them into lengths about 6 to 9 inches long and remove most of the leaves. Stick them into some dirt and keep them watered really well for a couple of weeks. That's all it takes. If you live in an area where frosts and freezes are an issue, keep these pots in a protected area where they can get light until spring. After the roots start growing, you can cut back on the water and treat them just like any other houseplant. But as I said, I live in Central Florida. I'm near the dividing line between Zone 9 and Zone 10, so I'm planting them now in November, while we still have warm afternoons. As we get cold, the leaves will probably die off at some point, while I think the roots will continue to grow under the surface. I'm not sure though. I'm experimenting this year.
Have you ever wondered what would happen?
I experiment with something every year. I take time to observe what is working and what isn't working, and I make adjustments. I try something a little different. I plant a different variety or a different species. I plant with a little more sun or a little more shade. In this case, I plant at a different time. I am by no means perfect, but I'm trying. And as I keep putting one foot in front of another, with God's grace, I get a little better each season. I am by no means perfect, but I'm better today than I was yesterday. I'm growing, but the timing for growing, for most plants, is critical. And in Central Florida, our timing is drastically different than it is for most other places. So this year, I'm planting my sweet potatoes in November, and I'm hoping that the roots will grow deep enough to help the plants be strong enough to be better ready to cope with the drought that we're already in and the heat that will be back in just a few short months. I don't know what will happen. If you're curious, make sure to subscribe to the channel to see updates as they grow. But for now, I need to let these cure. Most food crops can be eaten as soon as they're harvested, and there are even some, like pineapples and persimmons, that should be eaten as soon as possible after harvest. Sweet potatoes, on the other hand, should be cured first. To do that, they need to be stored for about 1 or 2 weeks with temperatures in the mid-80s, or 2 to 3 weeks if your temperatures are in the 70s. Either way, it's best if the humidity is 60% or higher. In Central Florida, that's easy to do this time of year. Just leave them outside somewhere the critters can't reach them. The warm air and humidity help the skin to harden and toughen up a bit. That helps to hold the moisture on the inside of the tuber at just the right amount so it won't rot too quickly, and it won't dry out too quickly either. It also gives the tuber time to concentrate its natural sugars for a sweeter sweet potato. When they're fully cured, they taste great, and while the dish does count as a starch due to the high level of carbohydrates, it's one of the healthier starches because sweet potatoes have a relatively low glycemic index.
If you make your own vermicast, cut the sweet potato peels off before cooking and throw those peels into your worm bed. Chances are pretty good that they're going to sprout new roots and grow new vines that you can plant out into your sweet potato bed or container garden. If you don't have a worm bin, consider making one. It costs less than $10, and in this video, I'll show you how easy it is to get started.
Thank you for spending time with me today. Until next time, I'm going to keep on growing. And you should too.